Well guys, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is one hell of a game. It does something that I don't think I've ever seen from a video game before. It bridges the gap between gaming and art. I'm not even joking before. I've never had such feelings before for a video game that was so flawed in certain ways, right? Like, the game is a 10. It's like nothing I've ever played before, but at the same time, it's also flawed in its own unique way. Very similar to how artwork works, right? It's flawed, but at the same time, that flaws is what builds the character, what makes the game so great here. So, there's one flaw I do want to talk about, and this was in an interview recently with the Breath of the Wild director. His name is Hidemaro Fujibashi, and they're talking about the dungeons. One of the biggest flaws with this game here, the shrines and the Divine Beasts, they're cool. To be honest with you, I like shrines. I like the shrine concept a lot. But the Divine Beasts were kind of messed up. I did not like the concept of Divine Beasts because it did not feel like a traditional dungeon. It wasn't as fun as the shrines. I don't know, man. I wasn't a big fan here. And they talk about how, something that I've already said before, I consider The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I think of it as more one big dungeon. The world, in my opinion, is a dungeon. And that's exactly what they're saying here. It's crazy. So what I'm thinking about is what the developers are thinking about here. Look what they said right here. Okay, so in past games, one dungeon was very long, right? But in this game, we want people to be focused on finding things. And to do that, they had many shrines, right? And they didn't want players to dedicate too much of their time to the dungeons. So they made the shrines about 10 minutes long at the most, so players can go jump back into the giant open world concept, which is the dungeon in the game. So yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, they did talk about the Divine Beast and that great stuff. But yeah, if I could sum this up simply for you, what they're saying here is the open world, it's a dungeon. That's what they want to. That's what they want you to spend most of the time on. They don't want you to spend most of the time on shrines or Divine Beasts. So for that reason alone, the Divine Beasts were kind of there instead of dungeons for the people who really wanted traditional dungeons. And the shrines were supposed to keep the gameplay at a minimum so you can get back to the open world, right? So it's a risk here. It's a risk, and I don't think it's 100% paid off in this case. I like the shrine concept a lot. I do hope they continue the shrines in the future in some capacity. I found those things awesome, but the Divine Beasts, they were not good. It was a risk they took on that, and it did not come out nicely here. So I do hope that the Divine Beast concept is not going to be anymore. You know, people want dungeons, but shrines are cool too. I like shrines too. Like, they remind me of almost like the mini dungeons back in the Ocarina of Time days, right? So I would love to see more mini dungeons like that. Before, I really hope. And also, Twilight Princess has some cool mini dungeons as well. So I do hope we see that again at some point. But yeah, I mean, for now, I mean, we're just gonna have to live with the Divine Beast and the shrines, which obviously they're flaws, but at the same time, it's what makes the game so unique, you know. So overall, guys, if you want to purchase The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Amazon link will be down below. Make sure you subscribe and like for daily news and reviews. So yeah. Thank you and bye. And have a good holiday as well.